welcome to our 15th episode of the program Samarpan Yatra. On this program, as you know, we always go and visit religious and cultural organizations for their spiritual journey. This is a program that is organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centre at the Consulate General of India. Today we are at Denis Hurley Centre in Durban, whereby we will be interviewing Mr. Raymond Perrier, who is the director of Denis Hurley Centre. Mr.Toki Mohoto, a social activist, will be interviewing Mr. Raymond Perrier. So over to you, Toki G.
Thank you so much for the opening remarks, Mr. Kunu. I'm now going to start my interview with Mr. Raymond Perrier of the Denis Hurley Centre. Thank you. Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centre at the Consulate General of India in Durban presents episode 15 of Samarpan Yatra. I'm today hosting the director of the Denis Hurley Centre, Mr. Raymond Perrier. Good morning, Raymond.
Good morning, Toki. How are you doing?
Great, yourself?
Very well.
Thank you for hosting us and for allowing us a perk into this wonderful centre. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the interview with yourself today.
It's great to welcome you and the team.
Thank you so much. Without any further ado, we're going to dive into the questions. It's not questions per se, but it's just a conversation that we're going to enjoy. Kindly narrate to our guests what is the Denis Hurley Centre, its history, and its work.
Yes. So the Denis Hurley Centre is a relatively new building. We've been around for 7 years, and we're in the very heart of Durban. In fact, we like to say we are where the soul of Durban is.
Yes.
On one side is the Catholic Cathedral, on the other side the Juma Masjid, the Grey Street Mosque, and just behind us a cemetery where Christians, Muslims and Jews and Parsis have been buried over many years. And right opposite, the home of Gandhi's original law office. So this is where the religions of Durban have been side by side for over a century. And the centre is named after Denis Hurley, who was the Catholic Archbishop of Durban for many years, about for 45 years. And the statue behind me shows Archbishop Denis Hurley. There are 3 things about his life that we try to reflect in our Denis Hurley Centre. First of all, to be a place that is working for those who are marginalised, those who are suffering injustice in our society. In Denis Hurley's day, that meant fighting against apartheid. In our day, fighting against poverty. We're working a lot with homeless people, we're working with refugees, we're working with people in this part of the city who are unemployed and suffering from economic deprivation. Secondly, not just to support people in practical ways, but also to speak out for them. So that's why an interview like this is so useful, because we like to be, as Hurley said, a voice for the voiceless, to make sure that their voices are heard. And thirdly, to do that in a way which brings together all the communities of Durban. So though he was the Catholic Archbishop, in his time he worked with all the Christian communities and indeed all the faith communities in Durban, and that's what we do here as well. We get great support from the Muslim community, the Hindu community, the Jewish community, the different Christian communities. They all come together and work side by side in this place.
Definitely. For those who may not be aware of the type of activities you engage in, kindly share with our audiences what is it that you do at the centre?
Yes, so we do very practical things. We feed homeless people. In fact, we served 160,000 meals to homeless people last year. We're providing breakfast and lunch 5 days a week, also providing access to showers, places where people can clean their clothes, places where they can make a phone call to their families, and most importantly, engage with our social workers so they can look at how they start rebuilding their lives. We've got training programs to help homeless people get into work or develop other financial opportunities. We have a project where we've trained homeless guys as booksellers, so they're selling second-hand books on the streets of Durban. We also have a clinic, and the clinic is providing primary health care to people who wouldn't be able to access government health care. Homeless people, but also foreign nationals. We've got a good number of refugees in the city from all across Africa who come to the city looking to improve their lives, and usually because they don't have documentation, they can't access government services. So they come to our clinic where they know they will be treated with respect. They're welcomed by people who speak their languages. We have people who speak Lingala, Swahili, and French, and also they know they will be treated with care and with respect. And in fact, our clinic team is not just here in the building, but going out on the streets, going to where homeless people are living at the side of the road and providing primary health care there. So those are the core of our activities, but from that, a whole range of other things emerge. So for example, just last night we were working with Stats SA, which is conducting the national census of South Africa, and we were working with their team to make sure that homeless people were properly counted in the census. Similarly worked with the IEC, the Independent Electoral Commission, to make sure that homeless people were registered as voters for the election. And we've been working closely with the Department of Health to make sure that homeless people and refugees are getting access to COVID vaccines and understand about the COVID vaccine and are motivated to get it. So in different ways, we are working to improve the lives, in practical ways, the lives of homeless people and refugees here in Central Durban.
Great stuff. Surely it cannot be easy managing such an institution, given the amount of demands that they may persist from the society as well as the pressures that you have. Can you share with us in terms of participation as well as responses from the different communities?
So we do have an infinite amount of demand, but we also, wonderfully, have an infinite amount of generosity on the part of the Durban community and further afield. I think one of the interesting things about Durban is that it's a city where people from across all the different communities want to help. They want to give, they want to volunteer, but they need to know how to do so.
Yes.
And we provide a practical way to do that. So a good example is our kitchen. I mentioned earlier we served 160,000 meals last year. We employ one cook.
Wow.
All the rest of the work is done by volunteers. We have volunteers from a lot of the private schools that are in central Durban. We have volunteers from universities. We have volunteers from temples and churches and mosques. We have corporate volunteers, groups of lawyers and accountants who come in here to help and to provide food, but also to see the work that we do here. So that is a very practical way of getting people to participate. Obviously we have to raise funds as well. We're a relatively efficient organisation. It costs about 5 million rand a year to run this operation. So that's about $300,000. Relatively small for the scale of the work that we do. And most of that is funding from within Durban. We pride ourselves on being a Durban response to Durban problems, supported by Durban individuals, corporates and organisations. Durban is a rich city. Unfortunately, like most of South Africa, the wealth is not evenly spread. So we try to encourage wealth to flow from the richer parts of the city towards this, which is the poorer part of the city. We also do get great help from overseas. We've had a number of overseas governments supporting us. The American government, the Japanese government, the Polish government, the Irish government have all been great supporters of our work over the years. We get very little support from the South African government. We get some of our medicines from them, and that's a great help. To be honest, often the South African government more of a hindrance than a help, but we try to work with them where we can, and obviously in advocating for the people whom we represent, sometimes we're having to speak out against government and hold them accountable for some of their policies or some of their neglect.
Yes. In as much as there are many positives that you speak of and the great number or high frequency of impact, I'm sure there are also challenges as well accompanied by this work. Can you narrate a few in terms of the challenges that you've had to face and what innovative ways you've had to introduce to overcome those challenges?
So I think one of the key challenges we have is that we're working with relatively unstable communities. Homeless people come and go, refugees appear, disappear, sometimes they want to be visible, sometimes they don't want to be visible. So that's, for example, a very important challenge for our clinic team. They can't assume if they see a patient today and they ask the patient to come back in a week, that the patient will actually come back in. So I know that our clinic team have to focus on what can I do for this patient now and not presume that they'll be able to see them again several times. If they can, that's an advantage, but they can't always do that. There are some situations where we have been able to build ongoing relationships of support. So for example, we run what's called the Daily Observed Treatment Program, and that's ARVs for people who are HIV positive and also TB medication. So by explaining to people why it's important they take the drugs every day and they come in to see us every day, and luring them in with some food to make sure that they come here, then we are able to keep people on their medications and keep them stable. I think our other great challenge is the sometimes neglect and sometimes the actively harmful policies of government, both at local level, at municipal, at provincial level, and at national level. The people we work with, homeless people and refugees, are people, sadly, government would rather weren't there. They want to just make them disappear. And indeed, sometimes that is the policy of the municipality. They will, they say, clean the streets, which means picking up homeless people and literally dumping them outside the city when there's a big conference going on. So making sure that government understands that our homeless people are citizens, the refugees are guests in our country, and that we should treat them with respect and dignity is a big part of our work. and making sure that we have members of the general public on our side. And what we find is that members of the general public are on our side. They understand when we explain to them that homeless people, instead of being one of the problems in the city, can actually be a solution to the problem, and that we can work with them to try and solve some of the problems of the inner city. But we are an inner city which has suffered a lot of deprivation. We suffered badly from the riots that happened a few months ago. People often give up on the inner city. We certainly haven't given up. I know that when we have foreign visitors here, they visit our cathedral and they visit the mosque and they admire these beautiful buildings, and they often say they're great buildings, but they're in the wrong part of the city. We say, absolutely not, they're in the right part of the city, because this is where communities of faith should be, because this is where the work needs to be done.
Definitely. Having gone through these different challenges or myriad of experiences where both fortune and misfortune fluctuates, give us a picture of where you see the center going into the future, and how do you hope to face emerging challenges and overcome those and still thrive a few years to come?
A key part of our organisation's success, I think, is partnership. There is very little that we do entirely on our own. Almost everything that is done in partnership, recognising organisations that have got skills, that have got resources, that have expertise. And by doing that, we can achieve a lot more. So when a new challenge comes along, we can find a new partner to help us with that challenge. Sometimes the challenges present themselves to us, sometimes we go out looking for them. So a few years ago, for example, we decided that we wanted to work much more closely with members of the disabled community. And so we found an NGO that focused on that area, and we were able to set up a cafe with that NGO, which was entirely staffed by deaf young adults, where they were learning catering, business skills, and running the cafe as part of the practice of their course. That was a great project. It didn't survive COVID, so we're now looking again, what do we do with this cafe space, and how do we make it useful in a new way for a new project. So we're constantly looking at opportunities. We're also not afraid to stop doing things. Often NGOs carry on doing things because they've always done them, and we need to have the courage to say, well, that was then and this is now, and let's stop doing it. We're always looking for new partners, and we're always looking to learn from everything we do and move on. We don't know what's going to happen to the city over the next 5 years. We hope we will be part of that change and a positive move for change. If we end up with riots like we had last year, then we're ready to cope with that. We're ready to cope with what the world throws at us. And we have a fantastic support from our donors, from our funders, from our partners to make sure that we can do so. We're not planning to expand. We are a specific local response to a local problem, but we do work with similar local organisations, not just around the city of Durban, but around the country. So we helped set up the National Homeless Network. And so the work we were doing last night with Stats SA and the census was possible because our counterparts in other cities were able to work with the different offices of Stats SA around the country. And we are working with the National Homeless Network and the Office of the Presidency to start crafting a national policy on homelessness, because surprisingly enough, there isn't one, and build that up from grassroots so there is a better understanding of what the real issues are.
I'm certain if we were to speak about the centre, it will take months and months on end. But your concluding remarks in terms of the message you want the viewers to hear, but most importantly, potential sponsors and partners also to rally behind.
The main thing I would want to say, and particularly to people who are lovers of India or involved in India or people of Indian origin, India, of course, was created as a secular state in which all faiths came together to build a state. That's a key part of Gandhi's vision of India and a key part of the vision of the Indian Republic. There are sadly situations in which that vision is under pressure. And I think it's interesting that we, as an interfaith organisation working for the poor, still stand out as an exception rather than the norm. That really shouldn't be the case. Any people of faith who want to do work to help the poor, the first question they should ask themselves is, who are the other people of faith with whom I can work? Because we can always achieve more by working together than by working separately. Let's not build ghettos, let's not build ivory towers, let's instead work in partnership. And the other thing I would say is make sure the people you are seeking to help are people you treat with dignity, people you treat with respect, people you can sit opposite and have a conversation like we are today. Not to look down on people, not to have an attitude of I'm the person with expertise and with services and I can help those who are less fortunate, but rather how can we work together to make this city better for all of us.
Definitely. That's been episode 15, and I'm handing over now to Mr. Raymond Perrier for his closing remarks. Thank you so much, Mr. Raymond Perrier. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Toki Mohoto ji and Mr. Raymond Perrier, for wonderful interactions that you did this afternoon. So now we know what Denis Hurley Centre is all about. Now we know what Denis Hurley Centre is doing to help those who are needy. So to Raymond Perrier, thank you very much, sir. We are clear now. There is no confusion, because when we came here, we were just shocked to see a lot of people waiting outside. We didn't know why they are sitting, why they are waiting. But after the interaction that you have this day with Toki Mohoto, now we fully understand the great duty that Denis Hurley Centre is doing to the masses of Durban. So the interactions were conducted by Toki Mohoto, who is a social activist. They were so interesting. We learned many things. Now we know what is Denis Hurley Centre. So to Toki Mohoto ji and Mr. Raymond Perrier, to both of you, thank you very much. To Director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centre at the Consulate General of India, Dr. Chaitanya Prakash Yogi, Mr. Kiran Singh, Nigel Padayachi, for being with us this evening. Thank you very much for taking part. It was a wonderful program that we have this morning. It was very interesting. So to all of you guys, thank you very much for everything. To our online participants who were with us this morning, we'd like to say thank you for being with us. You are kindly advised to visit ICCR in Durban Facebook page for more information on cultural activities organized by Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centre in Durban. Once again, to our guest speakers, Mr. Raymond Perrier, Director of Denis Hurley Centre, thank you very much, sir. To our ever-shining, evergreen Mr.Toki Mohoto, social activist, thank you very much, sir. To all of you, have a wonderful evening. Namaskar.